a podcast to honor the gods.
This better come with a sacrifice.
Deus Ex Media.
Content Capable acknowledges the Indigenous people on the land on which we record this podcast, the Turungurung people. We offer our respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Sovereignty was never ceded. Welcome to Content Capable. My name's Sam, yet again up at not an ungodly hour, but a morning hour, which isn't conducive to podcasting. We're still trying to figure out whether that's conducive to podcasting. Joining me today is the wonderful Maddie. Hi, Maddie.
Hi, Sam. Thank you so much for having me.
Hi. That was a rant. I apologize.
As someone who is also not a morning person, big Sam. So anytime anybody wants to get upset at having to get up before 7 in the morning, you just give me a call.
I'm deeply not a morning person, to the point where I worked a morning person job for a year last year. And I don't know whether my mental health was, I don't know whether I was okay after the end of it.
Oh, I had a rule for myself in college that I could do 8 a.m. classes the fall semester, but not the winter semester, because I couldn't stand going to class in the dark. that was my litmus. And so, and especially after finishing my undergrad and grad school, I was like, oh, you know what? I don't want to have to wake up before 8 in the morning ever again with any of my jobs, which was a bit of a rough patch for the last job I had, which was working for an international company. So I was up early all the time. But now with this new job, it's a lot more flexible. So I was like, it's great. I bring my best self to work, mostly because I'm showing up at work not at 6:30 in the morning.
I'm a journalist.
And much better. Yeah, much better later in the day.
No, yeah, exactly. Get me at 11 o'clock when I'm caffeinated and I've eaten some food. I'm a lot less moody. But I worked in morning radio as a journalist. And we were in the office at 7 o'clock writing the bulletins for the morning. And I was just in charge. I just had to rock up and be a physical presence. I didn't actually need to do any work.
Oh, thank goodness.
Theoretically. But it was still a drag because I had to be up at like 5:30 because public transport sucks.
Oh, no, my brother is also a journalist and he's currently a producer of a sports show. So same thing, way early hours, often late in the evenings when he's working games. Yeah. So yeah, I, as somebody who was going to be a journalism student before I switched to English, glad my life path has been windy to say the least, but at least I didn't have to do that.
Well, yes.
It wasn't my calling.
Well, speaking of your life path, it's very fascinating when we, for those who might not know, you put a lot of content online about, living your life and being happy. What inspired you to talk about that stuff, quite frankly, on the internet?
That is a great question. And sometimes I have a moment where I come to myself and I was like, oh my goodness, I am being vulnerable on the internet, and I'm being vulnerable on the internet almost all the time. And maybe that was an insane choice to make, but at this point it's too late to change. And also it still feels like the right fit for me. I think I've always been a chronic oversharer, mostly because I love people. I tell people that I'm an introvert in the sense that I usually need to recharge after I've done something social, but I'm an introvert who loves people. And so when everybody was talking about like the pandemic, like as introverts, like, this is great. I was like, I also like being home alone, but like I also miss being alone with my people. So, it's that like, oh, we'll sit in the same room and won't talk to each other for a few hours and then leave and be like, this was so fun. Let's do it again. But yeah, so I've always been a chronic oversharer. And it was this whole kind of project kind of sparked the year I turned 26. So my birthday is at the end of this month and I'll be 28. So it's been about 2 years. And I have really kind of always hated my birthdays ever since I was a preteen, mostly because the day always felt so sad to me because it's this opportunity to look at a year in retrospect, and I always felt like I was coming up short. I don't know necessarily by what standards. I think some of those were imposed by, the way that I was raised. Some of it was definitely just internal. And it was a similar experience I had to New Year's Eve. So my birthday and New Year's Eve were always my least favorite days of the year. It was like guaranteed to at least cry, once, because I just felt every time I hit these big year milestones that I hadn't really figured out how to live the life I wanted. And so I decided the year I turned 26, I was like, okay, my birthday usually falls on Memorial Day weekend, which is the end of May. And I was like, great, I have 3 months until Labor Day, which happens the first Monday in September. And so I figured that I would take 3 months and see if I could figure out how to be happy. And I am not a scientist by trade, but boy, do I love a social experiment. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to turn this into a project. And because I'm also a natural born storyteller, I think much to most of my teachers and my parents' dismay in some cases, I was like, I'm gonna turn this into a narrative. I'm gonna tell this story in a way that people feel like there's like an overarching theme. There's a running narrative, because I love that. So that was the first project I did. And then the next summer came around, and I made a video about how I was going to 8 different weddings over the course of the summer. And I was like, wow, that sounds insane when I say it out loud, and also perfect setting for a rom-com. So I was like, how do I fall in love by the end of the summer? And so again, that was also a project. That kind of led its way to now I'm trying to work my way through the artist way, trying to figure out how to be intentional with my creativity and the way that I spend my time. And all of this really is kind of wrapped up in the struggles that I've had with depression and anxiety and recently diagnosed ADHD, my brain has just like worked a little differently for most of my life, and I didn't necessarily know it. So figuring out how to work with my brain instead of against it, I think, is kind of the basis of this project. Sorry, that was like a wall of text.
No, it was, part of me, I'm such an interrupter. So like part of me was like, oh, I want to talk about X, Y, and Z halfway through, but I was like, I gotta let it go because I know that this is like a whole narrative here, and it's...
I'm also an interrupter, so I'm going to give you permission for the rest of the chat. Feel free to interrupt at any time.
But it's so fascinating for me, especially because for a bit of context for my story, I finished high school because I was a fair few years younger. Finished high school knowing I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was absolutely lost. I'd spent all of my high school just being consumed by the subjects and the topics that I was discussing there, and didn't get to even think about the outside world and happiness beyond, the context of getting a good grade in a high school subject. And so when I had to turn around and go, I've got to make a decision on what I study or don't study, or what job I end up taking, what career progression I want to take. And my parents, who, bless their souls, are like the most hardworking people ever, are like, Sam, you need to choose something because you can't just sit here delaying that decision for another year or two. I was like, well, I'm going to choose something. And me, the person who could never get above a B+ in English, decided to choose communications.
Love an underdog story. I really do.
And all of a sudden, I'm so good at this. I've picked a topic and my life is consumed by this one topic, to the point where this is why this podcast exists. It's why I've moved 3,000 miles away from my family and my friends, for work and bits and pieces. And yet I still claim that I am a terrible, terrible writer. But it's like trying to go, how do I work with my skills instead of, fighting what I believe I'm good at and I'm not good at.
Yeah. And I feel like there's such an expectation for young people to come into yourself so early. I graduated high school when I was 16. And so I was quite young. I turned 17 the week after I graduated, and then 2.5 months later was off 600 miles away from my family going to college. And so in a lot of cases, I was really like a high school junior trying to figure it out on my own. And I was so desperate to be good at what I was doing that I feel like I may have had a bit of the opposite problem that you described, in that I just made a choice and ran with it, because I was like, I'm running. It's a long running narrative for me, is that I'm running out of time. I always, for what, I don't know, but it's something that I've always felt. And I will say my parents were also a little nervous when I told them that I was switching from journalism to English, because they weren't entirely sure what I was going to do with that. And to be fair, my plans for what I am going to do with that degree have changed. But yeah, it's so difficult. It's something that I think I found myself craving as I got older, is I wanted stories, coming of age stories about people who weren't teenagers or people who weren't in college anymore. It was like, what happens when you are, in your 20s or your 30s and you're still trying to find yourself? Because I think, just with the nature of being human, life is just a continual process of remeeting yourself over and over and over again. But I don't feel like we necessarily always hear about those older stories. So that was, I don't know, I feel like all of my projects of self-improvement and discovery have really been about that need for a coming of age story that I haven't been able to find anywhere else.
Yeah, I think we also often forget that the average lifespan is till 80 something. So,
Yes. I mean, depending on where you live in the world, America's not doing too hot right now, but
look,
yes.
just in general, but also the fact that having it all figured out at 25 is a little bit of a scary thought. It's fascinating. I'm living with one of my housemates, happens to be basically the exact same age as I am, and we're both at the exact same stage in our careers. And it's so fascinating to see two completely different mindsets. Me, the person who accidentally ended up in journalism, she's the kind of person who's been dreaming of journalism all her life, and we're at the exact same point, and she knows exactly where she's going. She's in 2 years' time, I'll be leaving this job and I'll be standing in the next one. And journalism's weird, where you want to spend at least a year or two to get a good lay of the land and an understanding before you even move on to something else, and you feel guilty for moving on quickly as compared to any other corporate job. And also, we were talking about working crazy hours before we started recording. We work these really cushy 9 to 5, and we look at our friends and colleagues who work in say the city and work ridiculous shifts. 5 p.m. till midnight and 6 a.m. through to 11 a.m. Who works those stupid shifts? Oh wait, we have to at some point.
Yep. My roommate also used to be a journalist, and was a producer for one of the biggest news markets actually in the country. Same thing, crazy hours. She eventually also was like, actually, I don't think I want to do this anymore, which honestly, great. There's great freedom in that. So but I think it is interesting, especially when you have people who are, close to your age or have similar life experiences, to see just the disparity between how people's lives end up playing out. And I don't think that's necessarily a negative thing. And I was raised in a pretty traditional conservative Christian religion. I was raised Mormon, and the path for everybody's life is pretty laid out and also pretty specific based on what your gender is. And so figuring out how I could develop a life that felt authentically me outside of the parameters that I was set was, I don't know, it was difficult but also rewarding. And I think I don't know. I wish my younger self would have known that would have been the case. That would have been coming, because I think it probably would have softened a lot of heartbreak.
Weird question. Are you from a big family?
I am not from a big family. I did see that you have 10 siblings, which is, I'm also the oldest though, because you're the oldest too, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm only the oldest of 3. And so, my family was definitely the smallest Mormon family in our neighborhoods. And part of that was because my mom got started, and, for those people who can't see my fingers, air quotes, late on her childbearing. I was born the day after her 30th birthday, which was fairly late for a lot of Mormon folks. But yeah, there's only 3 of us. So, but I was always a little envious of the people who had all these brothers and sisters, and I think it goes both ways for people who come into families. I always wonder what it was like not to have this many people in your house, but I don't know. It's my dad has 6 older sisters though, so and my mom has 4 older siblings, so they also came from slightly larger families.
Part of me wishes that all of my siblings were around the same age that I am and not over a 20-year lifespan.
That's my dad and his oldest sister, it's a difference of 20 years. So my grandparents were much older than anybody else's. I was always really jealous jealous when all my friends had like young, cool grandparents that could go and do places. And I was like, cool. My grandfather was born in 1921 and fought in World War II. And so it's like, I can call him for help with my chemistry homework. That was great. The man was as sharp as a tack until he died in his 90s. And I could call him up and like, hey, I need help, I am searching for a chemistry term, but of course I can't find it because, again, English major.
Yeah.
But yeah, he would help me. I passed. I passed with a B-. And so, and I credit that to my grandpa Win, but it's just, it's always an interesting experience, I feel like.
I find the experience of being the oldest child, regardless of how many siblings you have, though, as long as you have siblings, so I think only children are a whole different breed of people.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, far out.
Shout out to all my love of my friends who are only children.
They are like, it's like not watching animals in a zoo, but it's so fascinating to watch only children experience the world. It's such a different level of understanding to everyone else.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And I seem to have attracted only children as I went along my journey. And it's
that's funny. I've collected a lot of secondborns and a lot of babies.
Oh wow, all the sibling energy, right?
Yeah, because I was like, here, I'll just take care of you.
But I was saying before, I think the pressure of being the eldest and going, I need to have my shit sorted together. I need to, be ready to do everything and set a good example for everyone else. And meanwhile, in your brain, it's screaming and chaos and no one knows what's going on. I think is really just a fascinating aspect that a lot of people don't talk about being the eldest child.
No, yeah, hearing about the phenomenon of being an oldest child, and there's a lot of discourse specifically around being an oldest daughter. I think that's very common. I also grew up, and again, it's not like my parents. I didn't raise my siblings, but my parents, of course, encouraged me. You're the oldest. You set an example. You show the others what you're going to do. And so yeah, that was a lot of pressure, and a lot of that I just added to myself because that's the kind of person that I am. And yeah, it's difficult to explain when it's the inside of my brain feels like that meme of the dog sitting in the room sitting on fire. And I was like, yeah, everything is fine.
Yeah.
You're like, how do you explain that to people? I don't know. I will say though, I have had people peg me as an oldest daughter, just from the way that I behave. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to use it as a strength. You're right. I'm decent at organizing. I'm great at giving instructions. And I will absolutely make sure that everybody has a ride home. But I don't know. It's nice to talk to someone who's also experienced that family dynamic.
Yeah. And I also think that, especially for and it's been fascinating to compare my experience as an oldest child to other eldest children, especially oldest children who do not come from such a ridiculously large family, and go and see what the similarities and the differences are. Because for me, a lot of my childhood was, you've got to set a good example. You've got to teach, your siblings how to behave or X, Y, and Z. And it felt like, felt like I had to be a parent. It felt like I had to be perfect to give my parents an example, to teach the rest of the children what to do, while also still being the guinea pig, both in the real world and just in general, because they changed the school system, the state school system, as I went through school. Literally, I think I caused chaos and destruction behind me because of that. And then, also then my parents figuring out how to parent a child after having a child at age 22 was wild, and upon reflection has been such a weird journey.
It's the fact that you mentioned a guinea pig, I think is very apt, because I've also explained this in regards to just a lot of different things. And I'll say that I think that one of the keys to having a healthy relationship with your parents as an adult child, and this is obviously, I was my parents were never abusive, so obviously lots of family situations are different, but I was my parents loved me so much, and they also fell short. And then, from my perspective, realizing that even though they fell short, they did what they did because they loved me. And so it's having that kind of that reconciliation and recognition between adults, children, and their parents. But yeah, speaking specifically to the perfection note, that was I think the really big the really big thing for me. I had a religious layer to that, which I think is common for a lot of people who grow up in conservative Christian cultures, at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was this hope that if I could make all the right choices, I can control the outcome. I would make my parents proud, and I would be able to set a good example for everybody who was following me. Set a pattern that they could model. And then it's difficult when you realize that being put on a pedestal doesn't leave very much room for you to move.
Yes, it's a very small pedestal.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, it's difficult for me even now to extend a sense of self-compassion because the standards I hold myself to are so astronomically high compared to what I would hold other people to. And learning how to balance wanting something for yourself, wanting to try new things and improve and get better at things, while also extending yourself enough grace to fail at things and be bad at things, and make mistakes. It's a balancing act I don't think I've quite figured out yet, but boy, am I trying.
Yeah, it is very fascinating. I think especially on the religious angle, like I was brought up Catholic. So religious guilt is well and truly alive in my brain.
Yes. I have a Catholic friend that we routinely joke about, like Mormon guilt and Catholic shame and like all this stuff that I was like, great, somebody understands even if you didn't grow up sitting in the same pews I did.
No. And it's like, for me especially, like I find my parents are still Catholic. All the siblings still say they're Catholic, I think. Look, it's always a question. It's also like no one wants to speak about like questioning your own faith, and for me especially, I feel like there's an extreme pressure for me especially not to question my faith. Like it's like, don't be publicly questioning it because we can't have like sowing the seeds of doubt among all the children. It's like,
oh boy, do you so someone who on TikTok not so much, but specifically on Twitter and Instagram, I talk a lot about my faith and my faith journey, and that expectation of not talking about doubts, not talking about the questions that you have, specifically so that you're not encouraging other people to have questions or doubts, it's been a rough emotional experience. I mean, I've been called, I don't know what other denominations are like, but the Mormon community online, on both sides of the spectrum of people who are staunchly in the faith and people who are out, it can be really, really aggressive. So it's like I've had people who have called me a heretic, who have like suggested that I'm being, influenced by the devil for simply just like asking questions or talking about elements of our faith. And it's an interesting experience, especially as someone who is, I definitely consider myself Mormon. I have a longstanding history. I'm, like a 6th generation Mormon on both sides of my family. But I no longer attend and practice the faith the way I used to. And so having that is kind of a little bit of like a black sheep moment on top of the like desire to be perfect and good as the eldest child was like a very interesting dichotomy.
Yeah. And of all things, like the 8 weddings that you had to attend, that would have been like, I don't know. I'm only 21, and I've seen, because I haven't attended because I now live too far away to just casually pop up, 4 weddings this year of my peers, and I'm 21, and I'm like mildly freaking out, going, like this is weird. My brother, who's younger than me, went to a wedding of one of his good friends, and then when I was back in town, I saw them, just by chance. I'd spotted them in the city, and I was just like, oh wait, they're a married couple. What? That doesn't make sense.
Yes. Well, so I'm the oldest. Both of my younger siblings are married. One of the weddings that I attended last year was my brother's. It was, I will say it was an interesting experience for the whole summer as we were, and at the same time, my sister was pregnant with her first baby. And so all summer long we had, bridal showers and baby showers, and, we were throwing, bachelor prep parties and all this stuff. And I was like, there's only so many times that I can answer, everybody coming up to me and being, so what are you doing? And I was like, you know what, it's hard because I don't have a big marker of what's, happening in my life. I've never done anything worthy of like getting to register at Crate and Barrel to get a set of dishware.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's, I don't know, especially around marriage, because marriage is prioritized so highly in the Mormon faith.
Yeah.
It's family and marriage is central to, a lot of the doctrine. And so having stepped away from the faith, and also even when I was still in it, not having been married by the time that I graduated from, my Mormon university, I was like, wow, I think I might have fucked up. Like, I'm like, I must have done something wrong.
Have you seen the videos on TikTok of like people on BYU campuses like asking Mormons all these weird and almost actually really insightful questions as well? It's a wild time.
They ask those questions and it is. And I know exactly where they're standing on campus. I think it's so funny. And I joke that I got radicalized at BYU. But in a lot of ways that was true. And I think that's fairly common for a lot of people who go to university. You're introduced to so many new people and so many new ideas. And so I arrived on BYU campus really kind of like staunchly conservative. I had pushed some boundaries about the faith, but like was still like adamantly in, really hadn't really done anything worth questioning. And by the time I left, I was like, whoa, okay, so I am a liberal now at this point, like leaning leftist and, questioning my faith, questioning whether or not I believe in God. And I was like, oh, I didn't think that I was going to go to school and that was going to happen to me. I just figured I would, read a lot of books and write a lot of papers. And then I left campus and was like, oh, I am a drastically different person than who I was when I arrived here 4 years ago.
I think, I think regardless of like what institution you go to, university is like an insanely radicalizing experience. Like,
yes,
there is no way that you can attend a place with thousands of people and not go, I need more sympathy for the world around me. Like that is just like, for me at least, because at the same time I was at university, I was working in a very, very left-wing radio station, the oldest community radio station in the country, and we just like, you get to see all of these perspectives, and it was great for me because I got to see a side of the world that my parents would have never have shown me. I would have never have experienced this without, someone going, come and have a look at this, come and, experience this. I've got a much better handling on how to be cool around, crazy people who are, spouting either A, conspiracy theory, B, their very passionate thoughts, or C, trying to convince me to join whatever society or group that they've started.
It's figuring out how to get out of a cult is a skill I think everybody learns. This is not me saying Mormonism is a cult.
Yeah.
But no, like just like I remember I almost got sucked into like an MLM when I was in college, so like on accident because I didn't know what they were, and so yeah, it's a matter of like figuring out how other people are living their lives, and like you said, there's that sense of compassion for understanding how other people are moving through the world, because I think it's only natural, only human to believe that everybody is seeing things the way you do, experiencing the things that you do in a similar way. But man, life gets so much more rich when you are able to see and feel compassion towards people who are seeing and experiencing the world differently.
Pivoting very quickly, why TikTok? Why not any other social media website?
That's a great question. I always joke that I wasn't hot enough in high school to not develop a personality, and so I was like I couldn't really break into the Instagram influencer thing. And granted, I think influencing, probably I would say, and a lot of credit to TikTok, has changed drastically, and that there's not just like one set look or lifestyle or outlook that is able to get promoted. But the TikTok thing was entirely by accident. And I mean that seriously. It was my third video that went viral. And from what I remember, I posted that video, and like within a week I had over 10,000 followers, and I had started with 0 like the week before. And I was like, I don't really know how this happened. And it was this was, I'm trying to think, fall of 2020. So we're like knee deep into the pandemic. And it was this strange kind of lifeline that just got thrown out to me that I was like, oh, wow, this is a platform that is, for all its faults and imperfections, was offering a space for people who necessarily didn't fit the traditional influencer mold to have a platform to talk to people about things they cared about. And this is not me saying that influencing is not a real job. It absolutely is. Now, having done like brand deals and partnerships, I was like, yeah, this is real work. Like people who use this as their full-time job, this is not for the faint of heart. But yeah, it was from my experience, TikTok has been a really welcoming and inclusive community. I think the app in particular, with the way the algorithm works, it really is, what you make of it and what you put into it. But, I found some really great friends, really great support systems, and just to see that there are other people who are feeling the way I do, and never, we're never able really to put it into words. To have the opportunity to do that for people feels like such a gift. And so it's not something that is, it's not my full-time job, and I wish I was more consistent at it. But it's a creative outlet for this, current theater kid and an opportunity to connect with people from all over the world who are having experiences that resonate with what I'm talking about.
I reckon half of TikTok creators are theater kids, though.
Oh, 100%. I was like, the energy on that app is distinctly theater kid.
It is that extra spicy bit of chaos that you go, this can only exist behind curtains, because how else is this supposed to happen?
Yes, it's behind curtains or at a diner at midnight. That's after the show closes. That's the energy we're giving.
Midnight diner, too much caffeine, energy. Oh, I can just see the scene. Yes, exactly.
I love it when people understand. I come from a family that is not a family that appreciates the arts, but they're not theater kids. No. And so even to this day, because I still do theater, my family is just like, this. Look at this. It's weird. And I was like, yeah, I know it's weird, but it's so it makes me happy. And being wise, I think, is being able to acknowledge that even those people may not understand what you're doing. If you're having a good time, I think you should do it anyway.
Oh, it's great. Our family are all musicians, so we're just theater kid adjacent. Okay. And I think band kids.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The orchestra room is just down the hall.
and it is a literal cult sometimes, so be careful.
It really is. So
it's always lovely to to connect with. I love how the band kid and the theater kid experiences are exactly the same, regardless of where you are in the world. I think it's an intensely.
Yes,
yeah.
And they all just collectively hate choir kids. And as someone who was also in choir, I was like, yeah, agreed. We absolutely deserve that. No questions asked.
Oh, wow. I'm just having intense flashbacks of giving the choir a really, really nasty side eye. Because
you were like, we're the real musicians.
Yeah.
We do real work.
Oh, the choir would always have the worst drama, though. You would think that the theatre kids and the band kids would have drama. No, the choir kids somehow got into such irreparable beef. I
don't know what it was. I was like, I don't know. Hiding behind those preppy polos and headbands, it was ruthless.
I remember, so we have a public holiday called Anzac Day, which remembers our service people and the sacrifices they've made. It's kind of like Memorial Day.
Okay.
Except way more somber. No, yes, there's a march, but
but it's not a parade.
No, it's not a parade. But so the brass group at the school would play there, because brass bands in the military are very interconnected. And the choir would obviously sing to lead the whole school, and we'd all come out into this grassed area, and everyone would take their chair from their classroom, and the whole school plus dignitaries would sit outside for 2 hours for this service every year. And I played trombone, so I would be playing up the front, and the choir would be singing beside us. And the dramas, the problems we had with that choir, and I can't badmouth it too much because now my brother's in the choir. But it's
we'll just tell him to skip this part of the episode.
Yeah. If you're a choir kid, maybe you should just skip the choir kid slander.
Yeah, absolutely. And first I was like, I was a choir kid, so I feel like, I don't know if that's going to either makes me uniquely qualified to talk about it, or I'm going to lose my membership card in, my high school choir from 10 years ago. But
we had band kids who were also choir kids, because our school wasn't necessarily large in the grand scheme of things. And a lot of them would just like one of my really close friends would just recount the drama. There was one kid who like graduated and then came back to like help tutor the choir, except everyone hated her in high school and then especially once she'd graduated. And she just like had made enemies of everyone by the time that she like finally let go of the school.
Oh man, I came face to face with my high school legacy a couple of months ago because against my better judgment, I matched with someone on a dating app that I went to high school with. He looked familiar. I couldn't tell. I was like, he was, from my same hometown. So I was like, I think we went to high school together. And so we swiped and we ended up going out. And I was like, oh my gosh, the fact that he remembered me from high school was terrifying. Not that he wasn't scary, but it was like the fact that I was perceived and that people remembered me. And then realizing that my like 16-year-old self is the version of me that is living in everyone's heads that I haven't seen since I graduated is kind of scary. That I was like, because there are a lot of elements of my personality that have remained the same. Like it is, the theme song is still the same.
Yeah.
It's just the post credits scene and just is a little bit different. And as like a 27-year-old to figure out what I'm like instead of what I was like when I graduated. And then another part of me is like, wow, fun to know that 16-year-old Maddie is like enshrined forever, like, solo in people's memories about what I was like at that time in my life.
It is so fascinating, and I think we always forget that like we do, regardless of like we talk about like big picture legacy, but we also leave a legacy of people's memory of ourselves at like a very specific moments in our life. Like high school me was an absolute mess. I was taking an extra subject on top of my whole entire subject load. So I took a full subject load plus one.
You too? Yeah, same.
I know, yeah, it's great. It was myself and the girl who got ducks who did it. And I wasn't as academically gifted as the girl who got ducks. So that was a fun time. And then I was diagnosed with depression halfway through my senior year.
Vibes, I say, as someone who was depressed my freshman year of college. Diagnosed depressed. I'm still depressed. I'm going to make that very clear.
They fired our physics teacher because he had an argument with the head of curriculum. He'd only been teaching at the school for 3 months at the time. And I saw him on his last day of work, packing up his car because I was in music extension, which went after school. And so I was like the one who'd last seen him, the only student who'd last seen him. And then our musical...
You're like the people on the news that they ask, like, this was the last person to see them alive.
Yes, I felt like
I didn't realize the moment was significant, but like, let me remember, like, tell me what I remember. Oh, wow. Yeah, that is significant.
The week after, our High School Musical started and I was playing in the orchestra. So Tech Week started on the Monday and we didn't finish performances until Saturday night at like midnight. And we had a physics assignment due the week after. And so every kid from the academic enrichment program who was also in the musical, where we'd all just like located each other every day at Tech Week going, have we got any updates? Who's heard what tea? What is happening with our assessments? They had to remark all our exams from the first term. Then the poor lady who was teaching the new curriculum that was coming in the year after us had to learn the old curriculum to teach us the old curriculum's worth of physics.
And you're like, why is it so different? I was like, if Sir Isaac Newton discovered gravity, how many centuries ago? I was like, how much has changed?
This was it was a mess. And then, of course, like I'm in year 12, and I vividly remember at one point sitting on the floor of my mother's bedroom crying at a blank Word document. I don't know what assignment it was. I don't know what I was required to do.
At that point, did it matter?
Yeah. I was the chair of the Student Representative Council. I was like playing in professional level bands because part of me is like, maybe I could make it as a musician. That clearly didn't work out because then I also had a verbally abusive conductor for one of those professional level bands, which like ruined professional music for me in any capacity. It's just like, that all happened. Why? And people remember me that time. Like, that's the year I graduated. What did people
Yes.
how did people perceive me? Like, I was such a mess. I can't remember it all.
Yeah, it's deeply uncomfortable. And part of me is like, okay, I guess that's fair. All the people that I remember from high school that I haven't kept in touch with have probably also grown and changed, one would hope. But I'll never know.
Oh, yeah.
Mostly because I refuse to go to my high school reunion. So I don't know. Maybe it's just I like living in the mystery. To be fair, I was in Europe when it happened, so I couldn't go anyway. But still, you know,
we always say because it's winter during summer up in the northern hemisphere, hot European summer, and ever since the pandemic has happened, there's been like this migration of 20-something-year-olds who go to Europe for the summer. And no one's getting married. Well, no one's getting married. People are getting married, but like no one important is getting married. Everyone's heading to Europe. I went to the States, like while all my friends went to Europe, and I was like, you know what? I'm just that different. Like I'm the Australian.
Where in the States did you go?
So I did the East Coast. I've never done the East Coast before.
Okay.
Which was a time. I fucking loved it. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're fine.
It was.
I think I've already sworn.
No, that's all good. Swearing is completely encouraged. But it's I did Boston, New York, and then I then stayed with friends in Baltimore, and we did DC, and then we did Richmond, Virginia, which is where a lot of my friends, a lot of fellow creators live. And it was wild. A month in the States. I got fired 3 days into my holiday.
Oh my goodness. Well, honestly, what a better time. You're like, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm, 3/4 of the way around the world. And so I might as well just enjoy myself.
I was like, I can't emotionally process this. I'm not allowed to get upset at the fact that, I've just lost my job, which paid really well. To the point where I've never been paid that much in a single paycheck since, just like ever. Yeah. And I was just like, I miss having that much money. Like,
yes. I will say that was definitely one thing because I was planning on getting a PhD after I finished my master's program, and I was like, wow, I'm burned out by academia. Another 6 years of school sounds terrible.
No, thank you.
Exactly. And then I realized I was like, oh, I could like get paid differently than I have for the past 4 years as I've been teaching. So it was like the kind of the opposite experience, and I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize what I was missing out on. So it's just it's nonsense. I really wish that wasn't something everybody had to think about, but
I know,
stuck in a capitalistic hellscape. Well, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, and it's funny because as a journalist, I have to write about like people's going through cost of living pressures and things like that. Of all things, if anyone follows me personally on the hellscape that is Twitter, I was talking last night about covering both all our federal, state, and local budgets. So because of our 3 levels of government, we have to think about what does this massive budget that does everything for the country mean for this little local area? What does the state budget that covers the whole state, including the biggest city in Australia, mean for this little tiny area in the middle of nowhere in Australia? And it was such a fascinating thing to go through and go. But what, if federally as well, because it was the big thing was the federal budget this week, and it was like going, well, if we're talking about fixing cost of living pressures, why don't we just and I've done research on this, why don't we just have a universal basic income so no one has to worry about money? And it was one of those things that you just start sitting there and going, I've been a poor uni student for long enough to know that what's going on here isn't working.
Yes, it's the same thing with healthcare in America.
Yeah.
I mean, because I don't think it's perfect anywhere, but I was not having a public healthcare system, and I was like, there has to be a different way for what is happening here, and I don't know. I think that to me is really the beauty of journalism, is making these really big, overreaching, effective policies, specifically showing how they apply to small communities and individuals, and then also just being brave enough and having the opportunity to ask people questions about how could we do this differently. That I think is so critical.
I am not a brave person. I got told off.
I say that as I'm also not a brave person, but you know what? If somebody else can be brave and ask those questions, like I'll back you up. I'll sit in your corner. So
The anxiety I had on Friday. So I always joke that I always say a Friday is going to be a slow day because I've done all my work on a Thursday and then I rock up to the office on a Friday and it's like, you know, some sort of bomb has exploded or something, and now there's 7,000 things, like 7,000 pieces to pick up to try to like fix it all for a Friday afternoon, because our paper goes to print on a Monday and we do sport on a Monday, so everything else needs to be done on a Friday, which is a pain. The amount of thinking ahead that I've done is like way more than I feel is necessary, but I had to like press our local council for an actual answer, like a reasonable answer on a set of questions I had, and they just didn't get back. Like they just didn't give the right answer. And my boss was like, "You need to stop taking the council's line," and because I was just like, "Oh, you know, it's just this." And the anxiety I felt from like having to like go, I need to stand up for myself and go, "You're not giving me the proper answer here." I felt sorry for the poor PR person who had to take my questions because it's not their fault.
no, and that's honestly like what isn't that the running gag of everything? I was like, oh, it's not these like low middle managers' faults but you know we're still like having to sort through the shit that all these you know bigwigs have done. But I mean, I will say, learning to. I feel like I've gotten braver as I've gotten older. I think ideally it would be really nice not to be afraid to ask people tough questions. I don't know if I'm ever going to get there, but boy, would my therapist be proud if I did. So you know, I like to think it gets better.
Yeah, exactly. Look, your content has been very fascinating to watch, and it seems to like. And I do not mean this in a bad way whatsoever. I feel like I'm about to be completely disingenuous.
No.
But it's a little slower than a lot of the other content you often see online. You know, we're always talking about how like fast-paced the internet is, and a lot of your content is very reflective and meditative and like a little bit more like, let's take a moment to breathe. How did you find creating that kind of content while everyone else is running around like a chicken's cut off their head? That's not
I think no, you're getting there. I think part of it is that this isn't my full-time job, and I think if I was making a living off of it, I probably would be behaving differently if I, you know, this was the way I made my income. But also I think I've tried my whole life to live a way that feels intentional and authentic, and I think those words get thrown around quite a lot. But I have always strived to kind of answer and listen to this core part of myself that's, you know, really deep in there, and honestly that kind of listening is hard to do. But these, you know, the videos I've made have given me an opportunity to practice that kind of self-listening, so to speak. And I also think I was always really desperate for an older sibling to talk to about these kinds of things. And it's not that my younger siblings, I can't talk to them about it, but having somebody older than me or who had gone through these experiences to share what they had learned was something that I always really craved. And I think I came to the understanding that, you know, if I wasn't getting that, you know, the way my life looked now, there wasn't anything stopping me from, you know, doing that for other people. I also think there's something that is so cozy and inviting about being willing to take things a little bit slower. I want to be a person that people feel safe with, safe to be who they are and talk about the things that matter to them. And to see the reaction that people have said to my content has made me, I think, realize that, yes, this is the right thing for me. In my last video, I was talking about how I'm in this process of trying to learn how to take care of myself, because I think for a lot of my life, I've lived with this idea that I'm not worth taking care of. I had to earn it somehow.
Yeah.
And so I did a kind of a day in the life like getting ready morning segment, which looked a lot different. It was not as polished. It was not as, aesthetic as you see on other accounts, which I also like really enjoy. I love that kind of content. There's something really satisfying about seeing people, restock their fridge and make a cup of coffee in the morning. But the amount of people who commented on that video saying like, I would take this, over a cookie cutter day in the life any day. You've said something that I've been thinking but haven't been able to put into words, or I felt this way my whole life and didn't know that other people felt that same way. It's both humbling and it's humbling and exciting to know that the stuff that I'm making makes people feel that way. Because I think at the end of the day, we're all yearning for connection. We're all yearning to be seen, and we're all wanting to feel like we are controlling whatever aspects of our lives are, within our control. And I think part of that is not treating the content that we want to make as something that needs to be generated as fast as possible. Great. I'm not saying what I'm doing is art, but I was like, you can take time with things that matter to you, which is difficult, I think, in a world that is so fast paced.
Oh yeah, all the time. It is such a important part of being like human, is that like we do need to take time to not necessarily have to like rest or like sleep, but like reset and reevaluate the situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like, I don't know, my experience with that has definitely like every psychiatrist and therapist and doctor has told me, it's like, you just need to, and my mother has told me to slow down.
Yes.
It's like, mate, it's time to stop and take a break. It's been fascinating. This month happens to be a month where I don't plan on going and traveling interstate or going and visiting friends or seeing musicals or plays or movies or anything. And last weekend I sat and I was like, I'm going to have a lazy day. My version of a lazy day is cleaning the house, but we make small steps.
All valid.
Yeah. It was just like, oh, like this is what a nice relaxing weekend is, when you're not like leaving the house before you would leave for work on a weekend to make it somewhere in time for X, Y, and Z. It was lovely actually to not like, and I think winter, especially here in the colder areas where I live now, it's going to be nice like that. There is no requirement to be running around like a crazy person to like be on top of everything socially and visiting everyone, and then also like being active and outdoors.
Yeah, I don't know, there's something really freeing about feeling like you get to own your time. I don't think it's a feeling that we get all too often, because I mean, yeah, we're living in a society that demands that we, earn a living and take care of other people. But the opportunity to realize that there are a lot more chances for you to make a choice about what you'd like to do, and make a choice that's in your best interest, not necessarily, thinking about everybody else before yourself all the time. That's a pretty radical act. And it's a lesson that I don't think a lot of us learn, or at least we learn and don't remember. So I definitely agree with that. It's there's something really, really special about getting to do that with your time.
Looking towards the future, obviously you're going through the artist's way. How's that been going?
It's been good. It seems like it's going to be so simple, but it's a lot harder than it appears. And I mean, I have a full-time job, so obviously I've got other priorities that are taking precedence. So learning how to balance things that are important to me, and also learning to prioritize, things like the artist way, things like rest and resetting, like that's pretty critical. I'm really lucky that I'm friends with a lot of other creative people, and they're creative in lots of different ways. So I have, musician friends and writing friends, and, composer friends, and all sorts of, other disciplines. And so it's been nice to be able to see and talk through my experiences of learning how to be more creative with these other people who are trying to do it similarly. I think one of the best things about The Artist Way is that Julia Cameron, who wrote the book, pushes against this idea that great art requires you to be tortured in order to do it. She emphasizes that you don't need to live a life that is, sad and depressive in order to produce great pieces or things that you're proud of. So realizing that, the tortured artist doesn't have to be the motif that I follow, even though sometimes I am, I have clinical depression. I'm always going to be a little bit sad.
Yeah.
But this idea that I'm allowed to live a life that is fulfilling and joyful, and also still produce great art, is a real paradigm shift that I think has been incredibly helpful.
Yeah, it's always very fascinating, and it's fascinating because, like, often whenever we talk to people who do create great art, they talk about their insane struggles and how that's inspired them or how that's, motivated them to do something. We don't have to fit the narratives that we've seen around us to be successful. It's so easy to try to copycat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about, leveraging experiences that were hard or difficult or traumatic and transforming them into art, because I think that's also really beautiful. I write and talk about some things that are hard in my life, but I think oftentimes as artists we're told that unless we're struggling, we're not going to be able to do good work. And having someone to say, actually, no, that's not true. Like, you are allowed to be successful. You're allowed to live in this mindset of abundance, and build a life that makes you happy and where you feel fulfilled and ask for help and, do all of these things and still do work that you're proud of. I don't know. I think that's pretty radical. It's, again, this opportunity to say, like, you are allowed to change the narrative. You can make yourself into what you'd like to be. And I don't know, that's pretty powerful. It's something that I don't necessarily always believe, but definitely something that I'm striving to.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Maddie, for coming on Content and Capable. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll come back anytime.
Where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, so I am Miss Maddie Jean across all platforms. That's MISSMADIEJEAN. Only my mom thought she was doing something, and I love that. All across the internet, Twitter, TikTok, and hopefully, Twitter Blue or not Twitter Blue, whatever the other. There's a new Twitter. It's coming out. I can't remember what it's called. It's a different app. Something that Elon does not own. Crossing my fingers that eventually something comes up. So,
I am, as a journalist, I feel a little bit stuck on that platform, really.
Mm-hmm.
But we managed to pull our podcasts. Me and a whole bunch of other creators pulled our podcasts off.
Yeah.
We're not going back on until things get better there. It's just
absolutely valid.
Yeah. And has there been anything that you've been listening to, reading, or watching that you wanted to plug?
Ooh, let me think. Okay, I have two things, two book series.
Go ahead.
One, I spent last summer reading through a lot of Octavia Butler's novels. She is a Black sci-fi writer who was a real kind of like pioneer within the genre, an incredible writer, an incredible storyteller. And I read her Erthsea Duology, as well as a novel that she wrote called Kindred. And I loved them both. I'm working my way through a collection called Lilith's Brood. That's just another sci-fi story. So really enjoying that lately. Highly recommend. And then the other book series that I'm also really into at the moment is called the Veronica Speedwell Mysteries. It's by, I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe I'll Google it while we're here. But it's about a Victorian butterfly scientist who solves mysteries with her hot ex-Navy / explorer / circus performer boyfriend, who I love. So it's by Deanna Raybourn. And she's great. So there's 8 books out now. She just submitted the 9th to the publisher. So you've got lots of, binging to do if you're looking for a long series. I absolutely adore it. Shout out to my friend Abby for introducing me.
I do love a good series that's got a good backlog, because otherwise you never get around to it.
It's just sad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Amazing. You can find me at sam.the.journalist on Instagram and TikTok, and samobjournalist on Twitter, where I seem to be collecting more journalist friends as I go. It's nice. I
love it.
Journalism community in Australia is so tiny, and so you just kind of I'm just happy that other people see me.
That's what Mormon Twitter is. So I completely I totally get it. Same thing.
I'm going to plug for people who might struggle to, I don't know, feel active very often. Walk for 20 minutes a day. I
second that.
Yeah, when I moved, I knew I needed to turn my health around a little bit. I wasn't living very healthily, and luckily I was just moving around so often doing things that, I was kind of doing exercise. Plus the radio station I worked in had these kind of crazy narrow steep stairs, so I felt like I was climbing a Maddie every day anyway. Anyway, I moved here and I started walking for 20 minutes a day, and it really kind of just helped a lot. As someone who doesn't take antidepressants at the moment, it's been a really good regulator for my emotions and my mental health, but also has helped me get onto harder things, to kind of start getting towards running, because my aim would be someday to run a distance at some point. We'll get there someday.
Couldn't be me, but man, am I going to be cheering you on.
I
Hot
hate
girl walks are for
running
everybody.
with the most burning passion ever. If
We've got a friend, so yeah same.
If running could be cancelled, that'd be great. Until I'm going to have to deal with trying.
Until then,
best.
we'll take our hot girl walks.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much again, Maddie, for coming on the podcast. It's been so amazing to chat to you.
Of course. Thank you so much. This has been so great.
Content and Capable was recorded, edited, and produced by Samuel O'Brien. You can follow the podcast at Content, the letter N, Capable on Instagram, and you can find it on Facebook. You can also send an email through to contentandcapablepod@gmail.com with any of your thoughts, queries, or concerns. The best way to support the podcast is to leave a review on your preferred podcatcher so more people can hear the podcast. The art was done by Opia, and the music was written, edited, and produced by Jason Hilton. Content and Capable is proud to be a part of the Deus Ex Media Network, where you can find a podcast for any of your nerdy interests.
Hey folks, Alex and I have been traveling, so there's no new episode today, but don't worry. There'll be one on Friday, I promise. I will make that happen for you. Our schedule's been pretty crazy, and we haven't really had time to sit down to record The Great Divide, but I prepared this little trailer for you guys, and I hope you all like it, so enjoy! Coffee, tea, honor, cabbage. Long ago, the four elements lived in harmony. Then, shit went totally cray when the Avatar attacked. Only the Cabbage Man, merchant of fine cruciferous vegetables, could stand against his trolling. But when the world needed some dank veg, he vanished. 10 years have passed, and my partner and I have started a new podcast.
My cabbages! An Avatar podcast.
A weekly show about Avatar The Last Airbender. Whether it's Sokka's new line of cologne.
Hey, look at you, sitting there on a seal. Well, now look back at me. I'm on an even bigger seal. Now look away.
D&D related antics.
You have to make an acrobatics check for that, and Aang just unzips his pants and whips out his D20s. He's just like, I got this.
Or randomly breaking into song.
Go bending waterfall.
We'll stumble our way through the greatest show ever made, one episode at a time.
You can reach us at CabbageCast, which is our Twitter, or
subscribe wherever you catch pod.
Rotten cabbages? What kind of slum do you think this is?
Thank you for listening to Content and Capable. Don't forget to rate and review, and we'll see you next week for another episode.
Deus Ex Media.